be replacing, who are you replacing today? Representative Howell, okay. So welcome to the Appropriations Committee. First item on the agenda is, are there any bill introductions this morning? Representative Concanon. Time is of the essence.
Full glasses don't keep the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bill to introduce on behalf of myself and Kristen O'Shea, and it's 24 RS 3103, establishing funding for a prison nursery.
All right, committee, you've heard the bill introduction. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Helgersons. All those in favor of the bill introduction say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Any further bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none. We're going to go ahead and move on to the presentation that we have this morning. And first, we're going to start off with the presentation for the Kansas State University and also the University of Kansas. And so first up is going to be Dr. Richard Linton, the president of Kansas State University. Dr. Linton.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and rest of the committee members. I will say that as a start, this is a special meeting for me because this was actually the very first meeting I had as president of Kansas State University 2 years ago. And so it is my 2-year anniversary, and this was my first meeting. And what was interesting back then, I was given a slide deck of about 115 slides and was told I had to give a 10-minute presentation. Welcome as president. I know a little bit more about this great university that I have the opportunity to serve as president. So I entitled the presentation, Kansas State University, the University for Kansans, just as a reminder to us and perhaps a reflection to you about the importance of the work that we do in the entire state. As a land-grant university, we are responsible for research, for teaching, for outreach and engagement, and for stakeholder interactions to do what we can do for the citizens of Kansas throughout every single community in our state. Next slide, please. Wanted to talk a little bit about the work that's been ongoing since I started 2 years ago. We've worked on a new strategic plan that'll take us to 2030, and a big component of this strategic plan is what we're calling One K-State. How do we bring together our 3 physical campuses in Manhattan, Salina, and Olathe? How do we bring together all of the components of the university itself, athletics, the foundation, and the alumni board, as well as research and extension that occurs in all 105 counties and communities throughout the state. As you can see, some of our key components that we're working on in our strategic plan, many of these things should not surprise you. We're working hard on enrollment and retention of our students, and I'm going to give some very positive data in just a moment. We're working on research and discovery, but connecting research and discovery with building the economy and creating jobs and doing what's right for the state of Kansas and working to be able to recruit industry to come and to stay in our state. We're also working on better engagement strategies so that we recognize not only to do what's been important for the last 160 years from a land-grant perspective, but to do what's important for what communities need today, things like rural health care and housing and daycare and elderly care. Next slide, please. Here is some of the positive information in a very difficult environment relative to student enrollment. As we look at our land-grant institutions that surround our state, all of us have struggled over the last decade relative to recruitment and retention of students. I will say that K-State has made some great strides in the last couple of years. As an example, we are up 15.1% in our out-of-state enrollment, and I think that's a good thing because out-of-state students bring a greater opportunity to keep these students in the state to be able to help enhance our economy. First-time freshmen are up 9%. Our in-state enrollment is up 6.8%, which is about 80% of our student base. And then our transfer student enrollment, typically from community colleges in the state, is also up 15.1%. Next slide, please. We've worked very hard. We've worked on improving communications to the schools, to guidance counselors, parents, prospective students. Our in and out of state scholarships, we raised $120 million last year to be able to support our students, knowing that student debt is one of the biggest challenges in students being able to make a decision to be able to go to college. Better technologies, strengthening our statewide outreach if you build a relationship with folks around the state, there's more of an embracement of the land-grant mission and better of a chance that students will end up going to Kansas State. And a big and bold vision for enhancing the student experience. This is my 5th land-grant university, and by far, from a student experience, Kansas State University is the best place that I have known of. The Princeton Review typically puts us in the top 5 universities in the country relative to the best student experience because of the connection with campus. Students love our campus, better quality of life, great health services, and a great athletic experience as well. Next slide, please. Research and innovation, again, is specifically as it connects with growing our economy and for economic growth and development. We have an aspiration to be at $300 million in competitive grants by 2030. You'll see last year was a record-breaking year at $221 million. Some of the things that we're doing is building internal grants program like the program that we call GRIP, which is all about building bigger, robust teams across multi-disciplines in order to be able to solve complex problems. As an example, water. With water, you might need an agronomist, a microbiologist, an engineer to be able to work together to collectively deal with one of our state's biggest issues. Next slide, please. I just wanted to provide you with one quick example of a recent outcome of a faculty member, professor of soil fertility and nutrient management, working on all of the components relative to genetics, relative to nutrients, relative to growing conditions, and relative to water resource management that are being used to be able to enhance crop productivity and yield and the economic outcomes of crops. Next slide, please. The other work that we've been doing that I think is very important is reaching out to all of our 105 communities throughout the state. In the past 2 years, as of March of this year, I will have been in every single county, listening to what our stakeholders need and trying to deliver research programs that help them, as well as outreach and engagement programs. Again, this is unique to what the land-grant mission is accountable for. Next slide, please. Using this same theme relative to using the leverage of 105 counties and communities, K-State 105 is a program that was supported legislatively last year to be able to help build partnerships so that we can enhance communities around the state to help to be able to create jobs and build the economy. We, on the 21st of February, this will be Kansas State Impact Day, we're going to give an update relative to the great success and progress that we've made with K-State 105. And my last slide will show specifics of our February 21st meeting here in the Capitol building. Next slide, please. I also wanted to provide just a quick update relative to another response from support that was provided legislatively last year, which was support for a biomanufacturing training and education center. This is in direct response to the largest growing sector of our economy relative to jobs in the future in Kansas. About 60% of jobs will be involved in advanced manufacturing, biomanufacturing, and food manufacturing. So we have already begun to create better space. We have already begun to be able to have better instrumentation and equipment to support this facet of the industry. And this year alone, we'll hire 12 faculty to be able to support our industry in a way to be able to attract industry around biomanufacturing to want to come to the state of Kansas. Next slide, please. I also wanted to provide a quick update relative to our appreciation relative to space on campus. At Kansas State University, like my colleagues, we have great challenges relative to the aged facilities that we have. And with aged facilities, it's difficult to recruit great faculty, keep the great faculty that you have, and recruit students. And so our backlog needed is over $650 million in these spaces. So we've been greatly appreciative of the funding that's been provided over the last couple of years to be able to support our efforts. You will see that in demolition funding, Kansas State University received $4.6 million, $6 million in capital renewal, which requires a 1-to-1 match. So in total, the state investment plus our investment is actually $16.6 million. But just with that investment alone, we've received a $27.5 million total savings. So it's already a great return on investment because of the costs that are not needed in aged facilities. You'll see a couple of these highlighted buildings and facilities at the vet school, a new animal surgery suite, and the College of Engineering's renovation of West Seton Hall. Next slide, please. I'd now like to just review some of the legislative requests coming from Kansas State University. The first three legislative requests were in the governor's budget. The first of these three requests that were in the governor's budget is to help with the payoff of a building, the BSL Level 3 building, Pat Roberts Hall, on the Kansas State campus. This was a 20-year payoff of a building that was about $44 million, and with the payoff of that facility, it has not enabled Kansas State University to be able to provide the resources that are needed relative to people, faculty, leaders, and equipment and instrumentation that's going to be needed to be able to help support a very important relationship with the new BSL Level 4 facility that was just opened up this past spring. And so it is our hope that with support of this building being paid off, that we can utilize these resources to be able to create the people side of what's going to be needed to be able to build out the maximum relationship with the USDA BSL Level 4 facility, which will be a major attractor of industry coming to our state and coming to Manhattan, Kansas. Next slide, please. Our next request supported in the governor's budget is a $25 million one-time, one-to-one match for the Ag Innovation Project. If you remember, a couple of years ago, there was a challenge that was provided through ARPA dollars for a 3-to-1 match. And Kansas State University raised about $82 million in that effort in 4 months to be able to receive $25 million from the state of Kansas. This project is now up to about $210 million. We still owe about $62 million, and with this challenge, this will provide us leverage so that philanthropically we can finish off this project in the next year or so. That $82 million that I had mentioned that was raised in 4 months is pretty significant. It shows the importance and the passion of this project. What was raised in 4 months hadn't been raised in 14 years in the College of Agriculture previously. It also supports the #1 economic engine in our state, which is agriculture and food systems. The third project I'd like to mention that was also in the governor's budget is the Kansas Water Institute. We have a real challenge here in Kansas that needs to be overcome in the next 8 to 10 years relative to water resource management and the challenges that we have in a depleting aquifer around the state. If we don't find solutions, our state is not going to be equipped to be able to support our agriculture and food system industry in the way that it has for so many years. This is a $5 million recurring request that would be used to be able to bring together all of the stakeholders in the state, including our partners at KU and Fort Hays State University, to be able to come up with solutions so that we're prepared in the next 8 to 10 years, continue to be leaders relative to agriculture and food systems. Next slide, please. In the spirit of time, I know that my time is waning here. I'll just mention there were other requests that we had that were not supported by the governor's budget, but I will make just mention to one of them. With our BSL Level 3 and our BSL Level 4 facility on the Kansas State University campus, we have what nobody else has in the world. Nobody else has a BSL Level 1, 2, 3, and 4 facility and all species of animals. With that BSL Level 3 and BSL Level 4 facility, there is an opportunity like no other to be able to gain industry interest and support and enable our economy to grow greatly. But we have a diagnostic lab, which is really a state-run operation that Kansas State does with a memorandum of understanding that's 62 years old. And at some point in time, I think we're going to need to address the issue relative to our diagnostic lab and make it come up to similar standards that we have with our BSL Level 3 and BSL Level 4 facilities. Next slide, please. Again, I had mentioned that K-State Impact Day is from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the 21st of February. We invite you to attend pieces or parts of that on the first floor rotunda. There will be a program that will be in play at about 10 o'clock, but most importantly, we'll be serving ice cream from 12 to 1, and we'd like you to enjoy the program and enjoy the ice cream as well. I don't think any other university produces ice cream like we do at Kansas State University. With that, I will stand for questions. And again, Mr. Chair and the rest of the committee, I appreciate the time with you today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Linton. Representative Estes has a question. Not really a question. I do have a question, but before the question, I hear that one of those ice cream flavors has a romantic twist to it. It might be the flavor you first had with your wife.
Oh, okay. How much time do we have?
So now I'll get to the question.
Yes, there is a new ice cream. It's the President's flavor at Kansas State University. It's a white vanilla base with really great chocolate chunks, crispy, crunchy chocolate chunks, and Michigan-style cherries. And those are my favorite components in a flavor of ice cream. And yes, I did put a ring in Cherry Garcia ice cream some 25 years ago for my wife. I'm just thankful that she didn't choke. But yes.
I do really great research. Okay.
Yes, you do.
And I have a curious mind, so my real question for you is, I'm delighted to see the increases in enrollment. I'd like to hear more about what caused them, and if you could refresh my mind, were the previous years also increases but a smaller amount, or were they decreases? And what percentage of the out-of-state students are paying in-state tuition through any special programs that we have?
All great questions. 2014 was our highest year in enrollment. We then had an 8-year significant decline. We lost 25% of our students in an 8-year period. My first year here, we had a very small tick up. Last year was a pretty significant tick up. I think the biggest components of that was more effective communications, better technologies, understanding what a 17 and an 18-year-old need in technologies. Mailings and postcards are not the way to be able to solve communications with a 17 and 18-year-old, so we did much more digitally. I think another big component as well was $120 million that we received in scholarship support through philanthropic efforts. 81% of our students receive some form of financial assistance, which is an incredibly strong number. It's part of the reason that we've got one of the best student experiences in the country. And so I think all of those things kind of collectively and combined have made that difference. Relative to our in-state and out-of-state strategy, right now we are 80% in-state, 20% out-of-state. We likely believe that we need to move to 70% in-state, 30% out-of-state for many reasons. One is we simply don't have enough students in the state anymore, and less of them are going to college. We've gone from 56% to 43% of high schoolers actually going to college. And so recognizing with limited students, we're going to have to be more competitive with the work that we do, but still, we're not going to have enough students to be able to support the kind of university that we'd like to be. And so that's why the out-of-state scholarships become so important. In these out-of-state scholarship models, it's scaling from GPA and SATs or ACT scores. A 3.9, as an example, will give you in-state tuition. And down to a 3.25 will give you 50% off of out-of-state tuition. That's the kind of thinking that we have there. You know, and you might be thinking, is it a really good thing to have more out-of-state students as a land-grant university? I think for the state of Kansas, the answer is yes, because it's actually bringing more students into the state that we hope that will stay in the state, which will enable us to be able to grow the economy.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a couple more questions, and then we're going to move on to KU. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, welcome.
Thank
so
you.
one of my questions is, here in Appropriations and many other committees, one of the number one jobs that were roles that were filling would be IT. And so when we look at the number of degrees that you have, is there or has there been a shift in graduates or courses or degrees related to the general studies, psychology, history, political science versus those high-skilled, high-demand jobs that we need desperately to fill, such as cybersecurity, informational technologies, web designers, those types of things that we just are struggling to fill here at the state and beyond? So the question is there a shift in the enrollment into these areas, and financial shift as well as student shift, and how is K-State helping us in these highly skilled, high demand areas? Thank you.
It's a great question. So, I mean, our job is to be able to shift and adapt to what are the needs of the market. in moving forward for our students. And we do, I think, a very good job of articulating and growing programs when we need to grow programs and lessening programs when there's not jobs that are available. To your question relative to those kinds of IT, cybersecurity, and those kinds of things, there are many more degrees that are in that area than we had before because of the job market needs. I think we can do more, and I think that we need to be thinking about and growing new programs that are much more adaptable to the future. I think another great example is biomanufacturing, and that's why we're taking this huge effort in moving forward, knowing that 60% of the jobs are going to be in biomanufacturing. We know that we need to have a much more robust program to be able to enable us to have many more students to fill this job market.
Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of the fastest growing industries in rural Kansas right now seems to be dairy. And I know a number of years ago we made an allocation for a new dairy barn.
Yes.
And I was just wondering what the status on that was, and also how the increasing growth of dairy in our state fits into your ag department.
So with the Ag Innovation Project that I had mentioned earlier, this $210 million investment, this is actually phase one of 3 phases. It's a 15 or 20-year project that we're trying to be able to build out that industry and build the infrastructure and improve the condition of our facilities. The dairy component of that, which was developed about 10 years ago, is in phase 2. Right now we're in phase 1. However, let me be clear that there's a tremendous need for those facilities because the dairy industry has changed dramatically over the last few years. The dairy industry will double in its size and scope almost overnight because of a new food manufacturing cheese plant in the western part of our state. So it is right now not a top priority for Kansas State University or the Kansas Board of Regents, but I can tell you it's incredibly important for the agricultural industry, and it's what we will be working on in phase 2 if other efforts are not successful in the state.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lynn, for being here.
Welcome.
And I just have to say, I apologize. I had pages, so I was upstairs in the governor's office. But I look forward to you coming back to my district and we're having dinner again at the Midland Hotel where Paper Moon was filmed.
That was super fun. So thank you. And I have to apologize to my colleague from KU. When I run out of the room in 1 minute, it's not because of him. It's because I got to be somewhere else. So thank you.
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Lynn. So next up, we have from the University of Kansas and the University of Kansas Cancer Center, Dr. Douglas Gerard, the Chancellor of the University of Kansas. And I do want to point out that in your honor today, the Vice Chairman has worn KU colors. He's speechless. He doesn't know what to say.
I know. I already apologized to you guys. Okay, guys. Mr. Chairman, they were threatening to take my degree away from me.
I seriously doubt that. All right, Chancellor Gerard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for having us today, and I hope to build on some of the themes that you just heard from President Linton and Vice Chair Hoffman. Hopefully, your skin's not crawling or something there. You're doing okay. So, all right.
No, I did tell him. I said if they do threaten to take his degree away, that we'll give him an honor degree from the University of Kansas.
Absolutely, we got your back, buddy. We're all friends, right? Again, thank you for having me here today. If we go ahead to the next slide. I'm going to just quickly run through some of the first slides in your presentation, which are really just backdrops to the university and its many elements. But certainly at our mission, we feel we're here to educate the leaders of tomorrow to help build healthy and vibrant communities across the state and the region, and to really make discoveries that will change the world. And I hope to share with you many of the different ways that we're accomplishing that today. If we could go to the next slide. We really do that through our 7 locations across the state of Kansas. Obviously, main campus in Lawrence, but also our Edwards and Overland Park, our Salina campus, Kansas City Metropolitan campus for the medical center, as well as Wichita, and then our law enforcement training center located down in Yoder, Kansas. And I'm pleased that I have Director Beck from the Law Enforcement Training Center here with me today. So if you have any questions specifically about that, some really wonderful things happening down there. But being out across the state helps us expand our reach, expand the service that we're able to provide. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the economic impact of all that. So if you go to the next slide, clearly our number one thing as a university is to help provide workforce, as you just heard Dr. Linton talking about. We produce over 7,000 degrees and certificates, and we can talk a little bit about the certificate side of that to Representative Williams' question earlier. But those are folks going out into the workforce regularly. We're about 43% out of state, going to those questions earlier. Of our in-state Kansans, which we have the largest number ever this year, 70% of those stay in our region and take a job when they graduate. Of our out-of-state graduates, over 35% of those stay in our state after they graduate. So that's 1,000 college graduates coming from outside the state of Kansas and taking a job in our region every year. And I'm not sure there's another agency in the state that can make that statement that we're able to import that kind of talent. And I think that is really critically important as we go forward when we think about our economy. We do that through working, the way we get that stickiness is through working with over 3,000 industry partners to create relationships, opportunities for internships, research activities, et cetera. And they, of course, are interested in doing that to get their fingers on the talent as early as they can. If we go to the next slide there. We also work to take our research, move it into active companies. We have 49 active startup companies out of our research, and on the KU Innovation Park and West Campus in Lawrence, we have 71 companies. Many of those are startups, but some are Garmin and ADM and others who come here to work with our researchers and with our students. And that's really a joint effort with our county, our city, and our Chamber of Commerce to diversify our economy. Most all of those are in biotech or tech and are rapidly growing industries. And it's really our research that drives that element of it. Next slide, if you would. One little known secret is that Lawrence and KU are actually the #1 tourist attraction in the state of Kansas. We bring more visitors into the state of Kansas to visit us than anywhere else in the state. And that's something that people we don't think about necessarily. Certainly my community thinks about all the time because they work very hard to cultivate that, but it's a great asset to the state. But I think one of the greatest things that a research university can do for their state is to make sure we're well positioned to take advantage of national opportunities. And those national opportunities include things like getting designation for the Cancer Center, which puts us in the top 1% of cancer centers in the country and provides those services across the state. Or getting our Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, one of only 29 in the country, and brings tremendous resources to our population. I worked very closely with the state and with the governor's office and Commerce and the legislature to attract Panasonic to this area. And they came, and of course, they're 12 miles from our campus is where they've chosen to locate. And a lot of that has to do with the relationships that we can help them with. And then current efforts going on around drawing down a hydrogen hub. That's a Department of Energy focused investment that's going to be in the billions as it rolls out across the country. We helped lead the initiative for the state of Kansas for that, as well as tech hub efforts in biotech. So again, things that a research university can really help take lead on to position our state to take advantage of these many opportunities. If you go to the next slide, when we think about how we serve our communities, we do it in many, many different ways. Certainly with the medical center, we have outreach really across the entire state of Kansas. Over half the docs in Kansas come through the University of Kansas in some way, shape, or form. But we have many others as well. And I mentioned the Law Enforcement Training Center with Director Beck here behind me, who corrected me that we don't take care of 8,000 police officers every year. That number is 12,500 or 10,500. About 12,000. There you go. I got updated again. An incredibly active campus. I encourage you to visit that if you're ever in the neighborhood to really see the amazing work that they do down there. But we also run the Kansas Fire and Rescue Training Institute, which technically is based in Lawrence, but they're never in Lawrence. They're in semi-trucks crisscrossing the state of Kansas 150,000 miles a year, training volunteer fire departments and EMS units in almost every community in the state of Kansas on the latest firefighting techniques and latest rescue techniques, like how do you pull pull somebody out of a grain elevator. Really important things to be known. And then working with agencies like our Kansas Geological Survey, President Linton talked about water. Well, they monitor 14,000 wells across the state and have worked with local providers to figure out how to maximize that water usage, and that is going to be so critical as we think about preserving the aquifer going forward. So really many, many ways that we help serve the state and help continue to drive the economy of that. If we could go to the next slide, please. But again, as one of America's leading research universities, a member of the AU, which are the top 70 research universities in North America, really we bring a different element to the table, which is our depth and breadth of the research that we do and the amazing amount of dollars that we bring into the state. And these research dollars that we bring in actually employ people. The research takes people. Most of that money goes to people. So our research enterprise, actually yesterday, the latest data dropped. Our research enterprise employs 4,300 people in the state of Kansas. That's more than Panasonic when it's at its full steam. And we do that every single year through the research dollars that we bring to the state, moving beyond the human impact of that. If you go to the next slide, and that doesn't happen unintentionally. And just as President Linton was talking about, we put a lot of strategy and thinking into this over the last 6 or 7 years. We can't be everything to everybody, but we are really good in a number of areas. And making investments in those areas that have the biggest impact from a research perspective, but also from a society perspective, has really allowed us to grow. What you can see here is about 65% growth over the last 5 years in that research enterprise. And if you go to the next slide, you can really see those areas that we have national recognition at the University of Kansas of having expertise and having some of the leaders in each of these fields doing that research. And these are the areas that we've continued to invest and grow to make sure that we can make the greatest impact. If you go to the next slide, I do want to touch just briefly on this because I get questions on this all the time about Kansas athletics. And actually, I may take a step back. The University of Kansas, like the Kansas State University and like all my colleagues, we are non-profit entities. 80% of Americans think that universities are for-profit. We are not. We are a nonprofit state agency. Likewise, our Kansas Athletics is a nonprofit agency, and we are fortunate that our athletics department is self-sufficient, and only 10% of them in the country can make that statement, that they actually pay their own way. In fact, they do more than that. They pay tuition, room and board for their athletes back to the university. So we're grateful for that. It does not require student fees to support our athletics department, and there's no state money in our athletics department. That said, it is very much the front door of our university. It is how we remain in contact with our alumni, with their donors, almost 400,000 alumni around the world. They stay in touch with us by following our athletics and coming back to visit to see games. And that has direct impact on the enrollment side. When we won a national championship in basketball, we saw a 20% jump in applications. When we had ESPN Game Day come to our football game, we saw a 30% jump in applications that month. There's a direct correlation between your ability to be on national television on a regular basis and the attractiveness of your institution and your state but across the country. That has certainly helped us. If you go to the next slide, there's a map here that really just talks about what's happening with enrollment trends. And this is actually a depiction of the number of high school graduates over the next 15 years across the country. And if your state is any shade of blue, you are shrinking. You will have fewer high school graduates over the next 15 years than you do today. And you can see that Kansas is kind of in the middle of that range at probably about a 10+% drop in high school graduates in the next 15 years. And we know that that will start in seriousness in 2026, 18 years after the recession of 2008, 2009. So going back to that question about out-of-state students, if we're going to have a vibrant economy, we have to have a vibrant workforce. And those who can import the talent are going to win in this talent crunch. And so I would absolutely echo what President Linton said, that we need to be able to attract that talent to our state, and then we need to figure out how to keep them here. And we need to continue to do a better job of that. If you go to the next slide, I'm happy to report that just like President Linton had reported, we have had some great success in the last couple of years. We'd had about 12 years of essentially flat enrollment for us. We had been very steady right up until pandemic hit. We saw about a 3 or 4% drop like everybody did. But coming out of that, we really hit the ground running. Last year's freshman class was the second largest in the history of the university. This year's freshman class was 18% larger than that, 700 students larger than last year, biggest one in the history of the university. And that is driving our enrollment up to the highest it's been in over 13 years, and on track to do that again next year. So I think a lot of the efforts, and that, as President Wynn said, that doesn't just happen. That takes a lot of strategy. It takes a lot of rethinking how we approach high school students and their advisors, rethinking how we work with families, thinking about how we create tremendous transparency in financial aid is probably one of the biggest things that we've been able to do with that. And the addition partnership with the state around need-based aid from the state has helped us, particularly with our in-state students as well. If you go to the next slide, you can see that we've had the ability to draw from all 50 states and about 110 countries when we look at our enrollment. And you can see where most of those come from, obviously the state of Kansas. We love to take them from Missouri every chance we get. But we do well in Minnesota and Illinois and certainly Texas and Florida, two big markets, all big markets for us. And we continue to grow that. This year's class has the most Kansans in it we've ever had. It has the most out-of-state students in it that we've ever had. So that growth has really been across the board. And I might just respond to Representative Williams' question. We had growth in every area of the university, but it's not equal growth. And really, actually, if we look back 5 years, we have seen a shift into the STEM fields and out of more of the humanities. And we've had to adjust our budget models and our hiring and everything else to match that. And we encourage that, obviously. Those are the high-paying jobs when we think about that. So, we love the growth in all areas. We want to make sure we're doing the best we can to meet the needs of the state. The reality is it is really hard for us to graduate enough engineers. Between our 3 research institutions, we generate about 1,700 graduates, I think, a year in engineering. The Kansas City market alone hires 3,000 a year. That demand is just astronomical, and so we continue to work hard to try and build that pipeline as we do that. If we could go to the next slide, I also want to just comment that we have worked hard. I stepped into this role in 2017, and of course we had a little pandemic in the middle of that too, but we've been working hard throughout that to really get our house in order, if you will. Over that period of time, we've cut over $100 million out of our budget, and we have, through combination of controlling hiring and also 2 separate volunteer retirement programs, we've reduced our tenure track faculty by over 12%. We've recruited our other faculty by 22%, and we've closed over 50 underperforming academic programs. And that's just the work that we need to do to right-size ourselves for the current state of our economy and our finances. That's not to say we're there. We're not quite there. This is a multiple-year process, and we continue on it, and I'm happy to report we're making progress, but we are far from done in that. If you go to the next slide, just some of the other initiatives that we've taken on to help address our financial challenges and just become a leaner, meaner machine, if you will. And when you think about what a university is, I mean, we are a community of 40,000 people. And we represent any community of 40,000 people in every shape and form. And sometimes it's like driving the Titanic, but we've got a lot of really hard work to do and have been doing to really position ourselves the best for the future. If I could just take my last few minutes to talk about our one request to the legislature this year beyond the basic requests from the regents, and that's really around the KU Cancer Center. If you could go to the next, skip to one more there if you would. This is one of the biggest challenges that we have facing us as a state and a country, which is the rapid increase in the diagnosis of cancer in our country. And ultimately, 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will experience cancer in their lifetime. And when you look at our aging population, our aging demographic in this country, we will see over the next 25 years almost a doubling in the number of cancer cases in America. And that's a daunting task for those of us who think about taking care of that. And so we know we've got to do a better job at early diagnosis. We have to do a better job at prevention. And we certainly have to do a better job at finding cures. If you go to the next slide, you can really see what the Cancer Center has allowed us to do. Which is, you And I got off somewhere. Go back one more if you would there. Do you have the map? Go forward one, maybe go two. There we go. Yeah, that's one. Sorry about that. Really, our cancer centers catchment area is defined by the National Cancer Institute as the entire state of Kansas and the western 15 counties of Missouri. We are responsible for cancer incidence and cancer treatment in that region as defined by the National Cancer Institute. We have outreach areas, as you can see in this map, that helps us take our discoveries and really our clinical trials out to these markets to help patients in those areas take advantage of that without having to travel repeatedly to the Kansas City market area. And that outreach is much of what the state funding that we get every year, we've had an allocation every year since 2008, has really gone to fund the infrastructure of this effort to help us. And I will say, we are the only National Cancer Institute that has a rural program like this in the United States. And they are now coming to us to say, how do we do that in other rural states? If you go to the next one there, great. Thank you. So being a comprehensively designated center, which we were in 2022, puts us in the top 1% of cancer centers. And we know that for patients being cared in this environment, they have a 25% better chance of survival than treatment elsewhere with this dreaded disease. And it has largely to do with the depth of the bench that you can build in these cancer centers of having over 150 disease-specific dedicated doctors across the spectrum of cancer is just an example. But also, we take care of patients from 50 states at our cancer center and about a dozen countries. And so that's people that are coming to Kansas to get their care and bringing their resources to our state for that as well. If you go to the next slide there. And the overall economic impact so far of our cancer center just since 2007 has been over $2.5 billion to our economy, and that's direct impact. That's not extrapolated impact. And it has allowed us not only to grow our research, but actually to attract the best and the brightest, which we really couldn't do 20 years ago. Today, we can hire researchers from the East Coast, from the West Coast, and from MD Anderson and places like that that are now coming here to do their work because they can see they can make a big impact. If you go to the next slide there, we talked a little bit about clinical trials, so I won't spend a lot of time on this other than to show you can see the number of states where we have very active clinical trial enrollment, or number of counties that we have very active clinical trial enrollment. And if you can go to the next slide, it really speaks to where the activities that the Cancer Center are going on. And we touch essentially every county in the state of Kansas in some way, shape, or form. And again, a lot of these are on the cancer prevention side of the house, which is so critical to reducing the number of cancers in our communities. So we know that if we're going to continue this work, if you jump one more slide there, that we need to, if we're going to address this wave of cancer, we need to think differently about how we do it. We need to get more aggressive on the front end, as I said. We need to push faster turnaround times of the cycle for finding cures and to take the research and get it out into the clinical environment. And for us, we know that to do that, and we know this in part because the NCI tells us this, that we need to be more effective in how we operate. If you go to the next slide, our cancer teams are essentially right now spread across 12 different facilities across the entire region, many of which are actually not even shown here. And that creates a bit of a challenge for us in our coordination and our collaboration for our research. So what's before you on a proposal is support for a new cancer research facility. If you jump to the next one, thank you. That really will ultimately co-locate all of our cancer researchers in one space, and in adjacency to that, all of our cancer clinicians in one space, and our clinical trials people crossing over in between the two. And the data has shown that creating that adjacencies really does accelerate the discoveries like CAR-T therapy and other things. If you go one more slide there. So this, all in all, is probably going to be a $500 to $600 million project. And we've raised $100 million so far in philanthropy. We've got about another $43 million from federal funds. And what's before you is a challenge grant that's coming to you, actually, from the philanthropic community. They've raised an additional $75 million and are coming to you, the state, to say, will you match that $75 million. And if the state can step up and support that, we will be able to draw down an additional $75 million of philanthropic dollars. And that's really what we're asking for. We're making great progress on this. This would really get us to the point of being able to launch this initiative, as in starting to break ground, if we're able to do that. And that's really the ask before you on cancer specifically. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to open up for questions and address any issues.
All right, thank you, Chancellor Girard. And I want to, this is going to be a personal comment. I had an uncle who had been battling prostate cancer since 2008. And in the last year of his life, he passed away in July of 2023. And you don't know how important it was for him in his last year of life to be able to go to the University of Kansas Cancer Center and work with the specialists there, his specialist at MD Anderson, his doctor in New Orleans, and trying to have the best possible life and care in that last year. And I think it's invaluable that we have a cancer center in the state of Kansas where Kansans and others, as you mentioned, from all 50 states and a host of other countries come to Kansas for cancer treatment, where, especially for Kansans, they don't have to get on a plane and go someplace else. And I just have to say, for my uncle, that was, it was very important to him in that last year that he was able to get the care here in the state of Kansas as opposed to flying somewhere else in the United States. So I just want to commend you, the institution and the Cancer Center for that.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. And I joined KU 30 years ago as a cancer surgeon. That's what I'm supposed to do for a living, at least. And, that was not the case 30 years ago.
I know.
And in fact, 10 years ago, 20% of Kansans were leaving the state to go get their care. That number is down around 5 or 6% now. So as that word has gotten out, and as we have built up the infrastructure to provide what you just talked about, we couldn't have done that 20 years ago.
And I think it's a little fitting that we're having you here today on the last committee meeting we're going to have this week because his birthday would have been Sunday. Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that there's a lot of great work that's going on at Kansas University and the hospital and many of the other great things they do. But Chancellor Girard, I'm concerned. I'm concerned because I don't feel like our Jewish students are being taken care of on Kansas University campus. We have a significant group there that supports anti-Semitic behavior. And I want to know what you and your staff are doing to ensure our Jewish kids are taken care of on your campus.
I appreciate that very much. We have a wonderful Jewish community at the University of Kansas. In fact, we have a fairly large Jewish community at the University of Kansas and have been known for decades as a welcoming place for our Jewish community, and many of those Jewish students, in fact, I was just talking to 2 grads outside, come from the Northeast and other places because they do feel welcomed at the University of Kansas. Obviously, the last 9 months have been incredibly challenging for all of us. We meet regularly with our Jewish community. We look for ways to support them in every way that we can, and we work in every way that we can to make sure all others are actually following policy, law, and other things. And I'm not saying this is an easy time. It is not, nor is it soon to be over, I fear. And so this is long-term work that we have to do. We've got a great community. We've got great support of the Jewish community in the state and actually in the greater Kansas City metropolitan area. They stand with us, ready to help as many ways to support them as we possibly can. So we are on it. We're not perfect. We'll continue to get better.
Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just 2 questions. So of the $502 million, how much would be attributable to the medical school and health-related cancer research versus other types of STEM, such as the engineering information technologies? That's question 1.
Excellent.
And then the question 2 is, you're a research institution, but we also need to care for 26,000 students or more. And so it's an instructional institution too. You say you were there 30 years ago. I didn't realize that, but when I was a biology major at KU, I had Dr. Engler, and he was considered the cancer god, but he taught my organic chemistry class. And it's a real challenge. So now for them to balance their research and instruction, and they I understood that they cycled in and out. So of all the research money and the researchers, how often are they cycling in to instruct our students at KU? And then with that, how do you balance being a great research institution and a great instructional institution? Because oftentimes they don't work as well together for the benefit of just the average student. Thank you.
That's
Chancellor.
a great insight. So first of all, from the research volume perspective, it's slightly more than half at the medical center right now than it is on the Lawrence campus. That's an inversion over the last couple of years through growth at the medical center, but it was about half and half, and is slightly more towards the medical side right now. As to how the researchers interact with our students, it is a little bit different on the 2 campuses as well. Obviously, far more students in Lawrence than we have at the medical center. Our faculty on the Lawrence campus, the way their time is split up is 40% teaching, 40% research, and 20% service. So they all are constantly in the educational, with rare exceptions, whether it's sabbatical or they're going away for a research project. They're all in it all the time. Now, they cycle between undergraduate and graduate and a number of other things. It is a real balance to do that. And quite honestly, what we used to be called as triple threats. If I was a world-class researcher, world-class teacher, and a world-class surgeon, that's pretty hard to do these days. Most people are 2 out of 3. That's increasingly becoming true in the research world. So our job is to be, the baseball team manager and to put together the best team on the field that we can, making up the components that we have. Some are going to be more heavy in teaching. Some are going to be more heavy in research. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes these are better at it than these are. But it really does require a constant balance between that. That's a great insight. Thank you.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo what the chairman was saying because I have some personal experience as well. Here's my concern. Cancer is a highly profitable illness. And I don't mind spending money. I understand we need to research. How close are we? How will this help cure cancer in the end? And I know that's asking for world peace right now, but my concern sitting at KU Cancer Center was thinking, yeah, this generates a lot of money. And I think that's true all over the United States. So I wanted to get your thoughts.
Chancellor.
Thank you very much. Couple
Thank you, Mr.
comments
Chair.
on that, if I might. One, first of all, I will tell you that research is not profitable. Cancer care, depending on the setting, can be, but research actually costs money. It doesn't generate money. Even the money we bring in, we spend more than that to do the work that we do. When I arrived here 30 years ago, 50% of our patients still died from cancer. Today, that number is 70% survive. So we've made a significant increase in that period of time, not clearly actually at the pace that we're about to see in the next 10 years. Some of the biggest changes have been in immunologics and CAR T therapy, which is probably going to completely redefine cancer care, and it's very likely in 10 or 15 years we won't be using chemotherapy, as an example. There's over 800 therapies in the pipeline right now coming through. That said, cancer is 1,000 diseases, it's not one disease. And so you basically need a bullet for every single one of those. And that's where the 800 comes in, because they are designed at each one of those. And we really need that. This next wave is probably going to be the most exciting time in cancer research in the last 100 years. Actually, we are on the precipice of a very, very big change, thankfully.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And the final question, Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had Dr. Jensen in before the Health and Human Services Committee to give us an overview of where that's at. And Representative Ballard and I had the privilege many years ago to be on the front end of when this all started, which was very exciting. My question with the investment that we make as a state, which is taxpayer dollars, is how do we get what's happening up there down to the clinics that don't have all this technology, so that everyone, irregardless of the ability to pay, can have access to it. Because one of the things was talked about was the new proton technology, and as you said, hopefully we won't do chemo eventually and those kind of things. And I know that the Cancer Center, the numbers we got back from your folks was about 4% on the Medicaid side. So kind of two questions. How do we do more to help those that don't have that ability to pay? And then how do we get it out to the others so that folks can have access to the technology that you're producing with the center?
Yeah, great
Chancellor.
questions. Great questions. So first of all, how do we get it out there? It's through these networks that I showed, which we are continuing to develop out. I mean, it's not even logical to think that everybody could come, and they shouldn't. They need to get the treatment they need, where they need it, when they need it, and that's close to home. And so continuing to build out those platforms through telehealth and actually really telemedicine, if you will, in the true sense of testing, diagnosis, and recommendation, and then delivery out is that network that we're building, but we need to continue to grow that. How you get it to everybody has a lot to do back with the question around cost, which is we've got to get the cost down, right? And you think about, probably the best analogy I can think of is organ transplants. So kidney transplants were phenomenally expensive 40 years ago. Much, much more expensive than having dialysis. But if you fast forward today, it's far cheaper to get a kidney transplant than it is to do dialysis. And that's because we got better at it. We figured out how to do it cheaper. We were able to disseminate how to do it and how to maintain it and how to be successful with it. And now, we don't have 40 years with cancer. We've got to make that happen in a handful of years, right? So the work for us is there, and we need partners in that. A lot of these are going to be phenomenally expensive pharmaceutical drugs, so we've got to figure out how to deal with that side of the equation as well. As these specialized therapies come out and they're treating, a few thousand people a year, getting the economics of that to work is what we have to figure out how to do. And I wish I could tell you I had the answer. I don't yet.
All right. Thank you, Chancellor Gerard, for being here today to talk about the University of Kansas and the University of Kansas Cancer Center. And I think Representative Hoffman's going to be waiting his honorary degree. So, oh, you're going to be giving a gift. That was a very good gesture, Chancellor.
Yeah, that's $75 million.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the budget report outs, and I'm going to turn over to Chairman Hoffman from the General Government Budget. I believe you're going to be starting with the judicial branch first. Chairman Hoffman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Gerard. Okay, we are going to start with the judicial branch, and this one has quite a few moving parts, so hopefully we can explain this kind of how. But just to start off with, the agency did submit a revised estimate of $196 million, including $183 million SGF and expenditures in 2010, 0.5 FT positions in 24. That's an all-funds increase of $973,000 or 5%, and an SGF increase of $1 million or 6%, and 8 non-FT positions above the 24 approved amount. $1 million of that is for the legislative pay plan shortfall. $350,000 SGF is for capital improvements and expenditures. Of that amount, $50,000 is for Judicial Branch Learning Center and $300,000 for the remodeling of the Court Appeals space and lounge. It also includes a decrease of $43,000 in base budget expenditures and an increase of 8 non-FT positions. That's a decrease in adjustment due to salaries and wages. Increase in positions are for grant-funded positions. As you know, the governor is statutorily required to just basically move the judicial branch forward, and so she did concur with the judicial branch's recommendation. The budget committee agreed with the governor. We also added $2.4 million SGF for security incident supplemental request for 2024. So these are the first costs of the incident, the breach incident, and we do have a breakdown of what that 2.4 million. It's actually 2.6, almost 6 million, but they have 250,000 of ARPA funds available that they're going to use. So it's 2.4 million of SGF. And did you have that where we could pass? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, that's fine then. All right, so basically it's consulting fees, a new firewall, data mining and review. There's software for, and also 24/7 monitoring is in that. There's hardware. And then they had asked for personnel also in that, but we did not give that to them in 2024. So that is the change in 2024. So I'll stand for questions.
Committee, any questions for Chairman Hoffman in regards to fiscal year 2024? Representative Williams.
Well, and this will be super quick, but just kind of going back to yesterday where they weren't really included in what we did yesterday, but you're thinking moving forward, those 14 FTEs for cybersecurity would help oversee some of these items or the security.
Chairman Hoffman.
Yes, I believe they will over time as the agreements are made and as we move forward. And as you mentioned yesterday, you know, there is a fairly massive bill that is being worked on in the Modernization Committee that would also enhance those ability for the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branch to work together.
Any further questions in regards to fiscal year 2024? All right, seeing none, Chairman Hoffman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For 2025, the agency requests 222.5 million, including 211 million SGF in expenditures and 2,050.5 FT positions for 25. That's an all funds increase of 26.3 million, and which includes 27.5 million SGF and 40 FT positions above the agency's 2024 revised estimate. That includes 3.3 million. Including 1.3 million SGF enhancements for hardware, software, and cybersecurity upgrades in 25. It's also a request for 100,000 SGF enhancement funding to increase grant funding for the Access to Justice program. These are grants to assist those who can't afford traditional legal services and help meet the needs of self-representative litigants within the court system. It's also a request of 4.5 million SGF enhancement funding and 40 FT positions for support staffing and equipment. Of this amount, 4.3 million is for salaries and wages, 150 is for personal computer, hardware, support equipment, and 12,575 is for the computer software maintenance and service. That it includes positions. It's a wide range of positions from technology, financial oversight, payment processing, litigant, jury services, really a gamut of a lot of different ones. The request also includes 5.9 million SGF enhancement funding for salary increases for non-judicial employees for 2025. It's an increase of 5% salary increase for those non-judicial employees. The request includes 220,000 SGF in enhancement funding for professional consulting services to help implement a portion of recommendations the agency has received from various court committees. Request includes 250,000 enhancement funding for digital evidence services in the appellate court program. This would allow for digital evidence solutions to help help their e-court system. Request includes 80,000 enhancement funding for regional training programs. This be training for their judges and people. The agency request includes 350,000 for capital improvements, and again, that's for the Judicial Branch Learning Center, and then 300,000 for the garden level reconfiguration. Request includes 250.5 FT positions for 2025. This is a 40 FT positions above the revised estimate for 2024. So the governor, of course, like I said, forwarded the request on. The Joint Committee did concur with the governor's recommendations, but we did make several changes. The first one is adding 1.1 million SGF to partially fund the security incident request for 2025. Of this amount, 439 SGF is to fund 3 FT positions, but the committee recommended the agency use available vacant FT positions. We also deleted 4.5 million SGF and 40 FT positions to not recommend the agency's enhancement request for supporting equipment for 25. We deleted the 5.9 million to not recommend the agency's enhancement for non-judicial salary increases. We deleted 250,000 to not recommend the agency's enhancement request for professional consulting services. We deleted the 80,000 to not recommend the agency's enhancement request for regional training programs. And then the last item is one of the reasons why we deleted some of the others is because the Budget Committee recommends that we review any possible expenses associated with the notification of individuals due to the security incident at Omnibus. So it is our understanding that right now they are in the middle of figuring out how many people were affected, getting ready to notify those people. Then we got to figure out how to rectify that, and that is going to be an additional cost. And at this point, we don't know exactly, but I just venturing to guess it could be in the $6 million range, somewhere around in there. So that's the reason why we kind of did some of the changes we did. The 1.1 million, again, is for consulting services, which that's just $50,000 for consulting services because those are coming down now that the incident's kind of been taken care of. Firewall, 46,000. Software and 24-hour monitoring, 547,000. Hardware, 16,000. And then the personnel, like I said, is 393,000. They actually wanted 51 positions, and 10 of them were, or 11 of them, I guess, were going to be from existing FTEs. And where I do believe they probably need some of these positions, at this time, we just didn't feel like that with all these other incidences, with all these other costs, we just felt like we need to get past this incident before we really start adding too many more. And then the 5.9 that we deleted for the non-judicial salaries, that was actually on top of what the governor put in her budget for a 5% increase, so we took that out. And then the other ones were just, we just were trying to save some money because we were spending it over here on the security incident. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, any questions in regards to fiscal year 2025? Representative Landwehr.
So have we now got the non-judicial, for some reason, it's just a tough word today for all of us, salaries up to par where they need to be, because we've done that just on a gradual basis?
Chairman Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think they're very close now. They told us that the last couple of years of increases have really helped their recruiting and retention. And, you know, of course, everybody would always like a little bit more, but I think they're very close to where they need to be. And I anticipate that there'll probably be another, when we do our full package, they'll probably get another little bit of a bump.
Okay, because I'm just thinking that, you know, if we're close, we might as well get it done, because we just seem to, you know, almost be playing games with it. We still have the issues that some of those are, you know, they're still sitting with some of the pantries and stuff in some of our courthouses.
Representative Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the regional training programs that were deleted, can you expound on that a little bit? What were those for?
Chairman Hoffman.
The training is for district court judges, and it has not occurred since early 2020. The expenditures include subsistence, food, and marketing costs.
Representative Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little bit concerned about that. When we have been working on the Child Welfare Oversight Committee, we are finding gaps in all different parts of the system. But the one part of the system that we have issues with are some of the rulings by the district judges. And it's a lack of training on some of them as to the sync code. And I have had conversations with the Chief Judge, the Chief Justice about that specifically, and they stated that they were having some training, or proposing some training programs. So my question was hoping maybe that was what was going to be addressed in that, and I would say it's really needed.
Chairman Hoffman.
Yeah, to both, we can get some more information on the non-judicial to kind of see where they are exactly. And then on that training, this course does not preclude them from doing that training. We're just not giving them extra money for it. So they could still do those trainings. And frankly, our committee was just trying to save a little bit of money since we had spent quite a bit more because of the, and I know it's only 80,000, but still, we were just trying to cut some things out.
Any further questions in regard to fiscal year 2025? Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, we added $200,000 to the judicial branch budget as a pass-through to Kansas Legal Services to do, excuse me, expungement clinics. And so I would like to request that we renew those funds for 2025. It's my understanding they didn't get in time to get into the budget, but they've been able to impact a lot of lives by hosting clinics around the state and helping people deal with their records. So it removes that barrier to like employment, housing, and education.
Is that a motion?
Yes, please.
All right. Committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Helgerson. Discussion on the motion. Representative Carlin.
Thank you. I was not aware of that was coming, but I appreciate that motion. As I serve on the Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee, we worked really hard to move forward on that kind of thing, and we have seen the benefit of it. Someone gets, a DUI and doesn't have the ability to pay for expunging that record, and those things really do impact employment. I appreciate the motion. Thank you. I hope you'll support it.
Any further discussion on the motion? Chairman Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do think this is a good program. We had talked about it in our committee, and frankly, we forgot to add it, to talk about it, and there was no motion made, and we had kind of a package we were trying to put together, and so I think it's probably something that we should really think about supporting.
Representative Helgerson.
It sounds like we're in general agreement, but I would ask that either the maker of the motion or the subcommittee ask and have some information provided to the legislature on what they've accomplished with the 200,000. Is that what she said?
Representative Owens.
I don't want to beleaguer the point, but I do believe that this is truly a fantastic program. When we talk about our budget and where our priorities should be, we just had a great discussion about redemption over here. I believe someone learned a lesson about the importance of redemption and recognizing that when people want to turn their lives around, we as a society should encourage that and provide those opportunities for people to do so and become good members of our community. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, Representative Curtis, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're back on the budget. Any further questions in regards to fiscal year 2025 for the judicial branch? Seeing none, Chairman Hoffman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move the adoption of the 2024 and 2025 judicial branch as amended.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Helgerson. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Hoffman.
All right. We will now go to the Judicial Council. If you'll remember rightly, last year we moved the Judicial Council from the fee funds to SGF, so you'll see that that's all their funding is now SGF funding. So the agency submits a revised estimate of $721,000, all from SGF in expenditures and 5 FT positions in '24. That's an increase of $4,757, and that is all attributed to the legislative pay plan shortfall. And so the governor concurred, and the budget committee concurred with the governor.
Committee, any questions in regards to fiscal year 2024? Seeing none, move on to fiscal year 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agency requests $727,000 SGF in expenditures and 5 FT positions for '25. That's an increase of $6,658 above the '24 revised estimates. That's the increase is attributed to contractual services, including equipment rent, dues, membership, subscriptions. It's partially offset by decreases in expenditures for state employee retirement contributions. The governor did recommend, of course, she had to, and then the budget committee recommended the governor's action. She had to, so.
All right, committee, any questions in regard to fiscal year 2025? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I'm missing it. When you put it into SGF, where are the fees that they were picking up, and what is that amount?
Chairman Hoffman.
Yeah, the fees now go into SGF, and I would have to double check here on the amount. It's pretty close to break even, but not quite. We can get you an exact number, but and we figured it would be close. But the whole reason we moved to SGF is because their fees weren't keeping up with expenses.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I am interested in getting to that number. The one concern, and it really was my only concern with switching them over to SGF was, are they then not going to apply the fines and such that they had been applying? I just want to make sure that we really are staying about somewhat even with the fines and the that come in.
Chairman Hoffman.
Yeah, and the Judicial Council doesn't have any fines. They're just simply the council that helps. You know, when we send, we'll say, hey, we've got a bill that we're not quite sure about. We might send it to them, and there are a set of judges that look at the legislation and maybe give us a recommendation. So there's no fines for them. So it's publication fees, things like that come in.
There you go. I'm obviously thinking of the wrong budget.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to add a little bit of context to the Judicial Council, this is really a tool that is used quite a bit by myself as well as the Chair of Judiciary. When we have a topic that needs a lot more lawyer brains wrapped around it, we can request the Judicial Council take it up. And Judicial Council is more than just judges. They bring in committees and subcommittees of district attorneys, defense attorneys, probation, corrections, legislators, to really spend a tremendous amount of time studying the topics that we request. For example, something we'll hear on the House floor that passed out of Judiciary yesterday was civil asset forfeiture, significant reforms to civil asset forfeiture that the Judicial Council did a tremendous amount of work and really studied that and made recommendations that were then brought to the Special Committee on Civil Asset Forfeiture. So it really is a great body and a great tool that we have to take a very deep dive into certain topics to educate us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions in regards to fiscal year 2025? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just the general questions on this, because it says that there are two legislators. Who are our two legislators? Would it be our Judiciary Chair?
I believe it is. I know that Representative Patton was on it, so.
Representative Williams.
And so then basically what I'm hearing and understanding, even though it's not a new budget, it's a research arm for the legislature, and it can work on the front end or the back end of legislation. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions in regards to fiscal year 2025? Representative Landwehr.
Well, and it can be, yeah, different legislators can actually be appointed to some of those subcommittees because maybe that's the area in which that they're working in because it came from there. So it's not just the judiciary chairs, yeah.
Any further comments in regards to fiscal year 2025? Seeing none, Chairman Hoffman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move the adoption of the Judicial Council budget for 24 and 25.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Helgerson. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Hoffman.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. All right. The agency requests a revised estimate of $1.9 million. This is the Office Administrative Judge hearings. And 14 FTE positions in 24. It's the same amount approved in the 2023 legislature. And so the governor concurred and the budget committee also concurred.
Committee, any questions? Seeing none, move on to fiscal year 2025.
The agency requested $2.1 million, all from the Administrative Hearings Office Fund. In expenditures, 14 FTE positions for 25. That's an increase of $178,000 above the 24 revised estimate. That is attributed to the increase in salaries and wages for the law judges to implement the second year of the 2-year pay parity increase that we gave them last year. So the governor concurred and the budget committee concurred.
All right, committee, any questions in regard to fiscal year 2025? All right, seeing none, Chairman Hoffman.
All right. I would move the Office of Administrative Hearings budget 24 and 25.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Helgerson. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now you are done. And we're going to move on to Chairman Anderson from the Transportation and Public Safety Budget Committee, and he's going to be giving us the budget for the Kansas Highway Patrol. Chairman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, starting with FY24, the agency submits a revised estimate of $140.7 million, all from special revenue funds and expenditures in FY24. This is an increase of $19.1 million above the FY24 approved amount. The increase is primarily attributable to the agency's 2 supplemental requests totaling $17.2 million. The request includes $7.2 million for major improvements to the KHP Training Academy facility in Salina, which the agency indicates is necessary to decrease operating costs and increase safety, and $10 million to construct and equip a new central dispatch facility in Salina to provide improved working conditions for dispatchers and meet disaster preparedness standards. The revised estimate includes 880 FTE positions, which is unchanged from the approved number. The governor concurred with the agency's revised estimate. The Joint Committee on State Building Construction concurred with the governor's recommendation for the capital improvements, and the House Committee concurred with the governor's recommendation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions on 24.
Committee, any questions in regards to fiscal year 2024? Seeing none, move on to fiscal year 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving to FY25, the agency requests $120.1 million, all from special revenue funds and expenditures for FY25. This is a decrease of $20.6 million below the FY 2024 revised estimate. The decrease is primarily attributable to decreased expenditures for major improvements to the KHP Training Academy facility and construction of a new central dispatch facility occurring in FY 24, but not reoccurring in 25. The decrease is also attributable to decreased expenditures for aircraft operations, primarily due to one-time purchase of an additional law enforcement helicopter in FY24, which was approved by the 2023 legislature. The decrease is partially offset by increased expenditures for the agency's 3 enhancement requests totaling $4.6 million, all from special revenue funds. These requests include $312,172 for differential and premium pay for sworn officers and dispatchers, $2.3 million for the purchase of the previously leased Troop B headquarters building in Shawnee County, and $2 million for the procurement of body-worn cameras. The increase is also attributable to the replacement of an aircraft hangar in Hayes. The request includes the 880 FTE positions, which is unchanged from 2024. The governor recommends $117.9 million, all from special revenue funds. It's a decrease of $2.2 million below the agency's FY25 requested amount. The decrease is due to the governor not recommending the agency's enhancement request of $2.3 million to purchase the Troop B headquarters building in Shawnee County. The decrease is partially offset by an increase of $125,000, which the governor recommends adding to provide sworn officers with an annual boot allowance. The recommendation includes funding for the agency's remaining enhancements concerning premium pay and body-worn cameras. She also recommends including the 880 FTE positions. The Joint Committee on State Building Construction concurred with the governor's recommendation for capital improvements, and the Budget Committee concurred with the governor's recommendation. Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions on 25.
All right, thank you, Chairman Anderson. First, I would like to, let's talk about aircraft. In fiscal year 2025, did the Highway Patrol ask for a new plane?
They did not.
All right, thank you. Next, let's talk about the hangar in Hayes. I know we had discussions about this in the Legislative Budget Committee. So it says the increase is attributable to the replacement of the aircraft hangar, but there's no dollar amount. As I see in the report, it might be in the budget analysis. Page 11. I believe it, page 11, 1.3 million.
Yep, page 11 or page 38. Yeah, 1.3 million.
And I thought we had discussions that they were able to find that in existing funds, but is that not incorrect?
Yes, that would come from the Executive Aircraft Fund.
But not exactly existing funds. It's coming from the Executive Aircraft Fund. It's existing funds. All right. Well, and the reason why I point this out is because here we purchased a new plane in Hayes, or for Hayes, and I think there should have been the due diligence to make sure that the plane was going to fit in the existing hangar before we bought a plane. Less than 2 feet. It's less than 2 feet. So that's why I'm pointing that out. Representative Helgerson.
You were pointing out the same thing I was looking at, and so.
Any other further questions in regards to fiscal year 2025 for the Highway Patrol? One other question I do have in regards to aircraft. When is the new executive aircraft going to be delivered?
It was anticipated for December of 23, so should be arriving soon.
All right, thank you. Any further questions in regard to fiscal year 2025? All right, seeing none, Chairman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee recommendations for the Kansas Highway Patrol budgets for 24 and 25.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Francis. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Okay, now we'll go ahead and move on to Chairman Mason with the Social Services Budget Committee. I believe start off with the one that we passed over yesterday with the State Institutions for Mental Health. Chairman Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me get my stuff organized here. The agencies request a revised estimate of $187.3 million, including $150.2 million SGF in expenditures and 1,454.9 FTE positions for fiscal year 24. It's an increase of $56 million or 42.9%, including SGF increase of $38.9 million above the budget approved by the 2023 legislature. This increase is primarily due to the agency's supplemental request totaling $27.4 million SGF and a transfer of $10.9 million SGF from KDADS for the hourly differential payments pursuant to the 24/7 pay plan. Additionally, the agency's requests include an estimated $16 million in carry-forward funds in the LSH Title 19 fund above the amount of the approved budget. These funds were transferred from KDADS in fiscal year 23 pending receipt of the fiscal year 2023 GBA to cover the contract agency staff shortfall, and they will primarily be used to reduce the shortfall in fiscal year 24. Governor recommends expenditures totaling $181.7 million, including $144.7 million SGF for the agencies in 24. It's a decrease of $5.6 million SGF below the agency's revised estimate. The decrease is due to the governor not recommending the request from LSH for a due process manager, which they requested $65,171. And partially recommending the request from OSH for contract nursing expenditures. Additionally, the governor recommends a reduction of 49 FTE positions below the agency's revised estimate to eliminate unfilled and unfunded FTE positions from the agency's FTE counts. The Budget Committee concurred with the governor's recommendations for 24.
Committee, any questions in regards to fiscal year 2024? Representative Helgerson.
Mr. Chairman, we've had an ongoing discussion, and I'm sure the subcommittee has looked at what the contract labor for the state hospitals has grown through. Did you have any discussion in that with the agency or among the committee about how it's grown and what to do about it?
Chairman Mason.
Yes, yeah, we looked at that extensively, and it's not just these two agencies, but other state hospitals and also in the Veterans Administration. There is an issue with contract staffing, and the problems vary, I think, by institution. So in particularly the not Parsons, but the Larned State Hospital, and to a certain extent, Osawatomie too, the historically low pay coupled with the high demands of the job have kind of discouraged some of that. And then with respect to Larned in particular, I think the rural aspect of that hospital has been an impediment to them. So each one of these agencies is aggressively and actively working on filling in-house nursing positions. So they're doing a number of different trade shows, are reaching out to colleges, universities, high schools. They're seeking applications on Indeed and other platforms like that. So we really don't know what the end result of the contract costs are going to be from year to year until really, like for fiscal year 25, we're not going to know the actual numbers till we get close to the end of fiscal year 25.
Representative Helgerson.
Mr. Chairman, there is a chart that legislative researchers pulled together, if they could hand that out to the committee. In it shows, and initially I was like, I think other legislators, we thought this was a COVID phenomenon where it has grown and we couldn't deal with it, but this has now gone on, and the magnitude of these numbers is shocking and scary. The idea that we've gone from 133,000 in 19 to an estimated $19 million for Osawatomie, and there is no end in sight, and gone from almost 6 million to 40-some million for Larned, we can't sustain this. I have no intention of playing games with the dollars that have to be there. But I think it is a crisis that we need to that I'm going to make a motion to pull out the contract labor in both of these institutions, ask the chairman to appoint a committee, do whatever necessary, but we have to have some kind of a recommendation and a possible solution with the administration, with the communities, and say, we cannot sustain this. We've had discussions, and the legislature's made recommendation about a hospital in Wichita. This impacts that size of the Wichita hospital in part because we can't get staffing out in Larned and Osawatomie. I don't know if we can do that in Wichita, but we cannot sustain for any length of time the amount of contract labor. We used to pay for all the the hospitals with hotels. I know I misspoke. All of the hospitals with just the contract labor, and now we're doing this without thinking about it. And I know we probably have to do it this year, but as a board of directors, if this was brought to us as a board of directors after 5 years, we'd say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We'd come up with something radical. And I'm not saying we're going to be able to do anything radical because we definitely want to take care of the people. But we have to say this is one of the top priorities of the legislature. So I'm going to make a motion to, I'll shut up, to pull it out of both of the hospitals and deal with it in omnibus.
But that's just for fiscal year 2025.
Yes.
We're on 2024.
I'm sorry, I said for, do you want it for 24 and 25, or for, how would you like it?
Well, I would say if you're going to have it pushed back to omnibus, it'd be pointless to have it in fiscal year 2024. So I would hold off on your motion until fiscal year 2025.
Shut up.
And then Chairman Mason, did you have any comments in regards to that?
I don't think there's a person in this building that would disagree with those comments. I would say this, that one of the things we looked at as a committee would be liability insurance for these staffing agencies. And I think that's something that not just, it's not just state agencies that have this issue, but if you look at our not-for-profit care homes, nursing facilities, those too have contract staffing issues. And one of the things we really need to do as you chair this subcommittee is one of the things we need to look at, I believe, is do these contract staffing agencies have adequate liability, not just for the agency themselves, but for individual nurses. So we're hearing all the time about medications that are administered to the wrong medication to the wrong person. So we need to find out if that continues to happen with contract staffing, who is liable? Is it the state institution? Is it the not-for-profit nursing facilities? Those are things that really need to be looked at.
Representative Landwehr.
Till we get to 25 and
I'm reserving my comments for fiscal year 2025.
on Representative Helgerson's.
Any other further questions in regards to fiscal year 2024? All right, seeing none. Now you may move on to fiscal year 2025, and I think we're going to have a lengthy discussion in regards to fiscal year 2025.
Do you think? Okay, the agencies request $176.2 million, including $155.2 million SGF in expenditures and 1,454.9 FTE positions for fiscal year 2025. This is a decrease of $11 million, or 5.9%, including a SGF increase of $5 million, or 3.3% from the agency's request for 2024. The overall decrease is due to an anticipated decrease of $14.5 million in the LSH Title 19 fund and a decrease of $14.3 million SGF due to the 24/7 pay plan transfer appearing in the KDAD's budget for fiscal year 2025. The overall decrease is partially offset by the agency's enhancement requests in totaling $43 million SGF. The governor recommends expenditures totaling $134.1 million, including $112.8 million SGF for the agencies for fiscal year 2025. This is a reduction of $42.1 million, including $42.6 million SGF below the agency's request for 25. The reduction is due to the governor not recommending the following enhancement requests. The LSH SPTP Deputy Superintendent, the LSH Due Process Manager, LSH Contract Nursing, OSH Contract Nursing, and LSH SPTP Primary Medical Care Staff. Additionally, the governor recommends a slight reduction to the request by LSH for a forensic evaluator, a decrease of 4,502 SGF. Finally, the governor recommends using state institutional building fund monies for the Biddle Courtyard renovation or remodel, a decrease of 492,886 SGF and an increase in the same amount as IBF. The governor's recommendations also include reduction of 49 FTE positions below the agency's request to eliminate unfilled, unfunded FTE positions. The Budget Committee concurred with the governor's recommendation with the following adjustment. The committee added back in 326,454 SGF to employ a primary medical care staff number to address the increased need of the aging population sexual predator treatment program at Larned State Hospital. I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman Mason. Representative Landwehr.
On the 326,454, can you elaborate on what that need is?
Chairman
and what
Mason.
that need will address?
Chairman Mason.
I beg your pardon. Would you repeat that, Representative?
The add of 326,454 SGF, what is the need and what does that, define that, explain that to us?
Chairman Mason.
What will they do?
Well, as it was presented, because of the aging population of the sexual predator program at Larned State Hospital, the medical needs are intensifying and increasing, and this is why they asked for that money.
Representative Landwehr.
So we're going to pay a member $326,000 to deal with enhanced needs for the aging population?
Chairman Mason.
Hmm?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So in the budget report, if you'll turn to page 12, item number 3, you can see the increase in sick calls. So the medical appointments increased from 814 in fiscal year 2021 to 1,136 in fiscal year 2023, and sick calls increased from 1,542 in fiscal year 2021 to 1,858 in fiscal year 2023.
But I think going back to Representative Landwehr's question, if you look at the very first line on that item number 3, it's to employ one primary care medical staff. So we're talking about $326,000 for one person.
Yeah.
Representative Estes.
When you say primary care medical staff, that makes me think a doctor. And if that is what that request is, did you guys consider a physician's assistant?
Chairman Mason.
No, that was not talked about.
Representative Landwehr.
Well, it still goes back to what is this person's qualifications for $326,000. We have primary care physicians across the state that are probably hitting around $326,000 running a practice.
Chairman Mason.
Yes, the position would be for a physician, full-time physician.
Representative Landwehr?
Okay, I'm still having difficulty understanding that, and I think where Representative Estes went, we could hire 2 PAs at least, maybe 2.5 for that amount of money to address this. So I think what we need to have, Mr. Chairman, would be the, what is our population? I haven't looked at those numbers in years. How's that break down per age? How many of these individuals have we actually put back into the community? The last time I was aware, I think we had 2 of them that were back in the community, and that was a very hard placement to make. So I think until we get those details, Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion to remove that and look at that at omnibus.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Turk. Discussion on the motion. All right, seeing none. Representative Landwehr, you may close in your motion.
Close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Representative Estes.
My question got answered. Thank you.
Representative Helgerson.
Conversations with legislative research asked, and on my motion, I specifically refer to eliminating the Larned contract for contract nursing of $31 million, SGF, and Osawatomie of $10.5 million, so there are specifics in there. I will make the motion that that money be removed to omnibus and that the chairman appoint a committee to review and come up with some recommendations. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Kincannon. Discussion on the motion. So the first thing that I would say, since you've actually challenged me to set up a committee, which I actually have to.
You want me to catch that?
No, I just have to. I have to clear that by the speaker. But I will say, for years, namely in regards to the Larned State Hospital and actually the entire campus in Larned, I've been trying to get all the different groups together. And when I say groups, I mean the city of Larned, the county of Pawnee, Fort Hays State University, Barton County Community College, Dodge City Community College, the campus of Larned State Hospital and the Larned Correctional Facility to get together to try to address the needs and the issue of hiring out at that facility. That facility is not going away. It's always going to be there, but yet we are having an issue in trying to attract individuals to work at those facilities. That's on the Larned campus. If you recall back in 2018 when we had the mental health tour across the state of Kansas, the community of Larned and Pawnee County, gave us pins that said, "We love Larned." And they embrace having that campus in their county. But at the same time, not only do we have to address pay and how to attract and retain individuals out there, we also need to address housing. There's so many other things that we have to consider. So I do welcome the challenge that the maker of the motion has made in regards to having a interim committee set up to try to address this issue, not only for Larned, but also for Osawatomie, but the variables in play with the different type of economies between Osawatomie and Larned are very starkly different. But I do welcome the idea of having a committee to get all those partners into a committee and a room and talk about exactly how we're going to address this, because as he mentioned in his motion, this is unsustainable. $50 million annually in contract nursing is only going to go up year after year after year. And we need to address this sooner than later. So I will say I do appreciate the motion. Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The issue isn't unique just to Osawatomie or to Larned. It's a crisis that we're dealing with across the state, whether it's in our hospitals, it's in our clinics, you name it, we're short, period. And a lot of that happened during COVID when we had a lot of individuals that were working past retirement age. Then COVID hit and the different things that were put on their back, such as the long hours, the long shifts, working shifts they didn't want to work, being required to take the vaccine, those retirees said, we're done, and they walked out the door. And we knew we were having a problem. We also knew that something that we realized after the fact, we knew it was going to be an issue when Minigers left Topeka, or left Kansas. When they left, they took the workforce with them because we're no longer training them here. So that's the other thing that we're dealing with. What we do have is, that's been worked on now for the last 2 years, and it's getting close to being put into place, and that's the Mental Health Center for Excellence, which is a program that also has some federal support. It has brought together all of the stakeholders across the state. We've brought our universities, et cetera, because we have to figure out how can we get back to training these individuals so that when we train them, they stay here. The individuals working on this have sat down with Minigers in Houston. They've also visited with Dr. Roy Miniger, who's still here in Topeka. And I think that they've got a really good plan, but it's going to be a slow process. We also need the health professionals, the schools, et cetera, to give us ideas on how can we create some entry-level folks so we can get them into the workforce, to relieve some of the pressure on the higher scoped individuals, and some of the regulations, et cetera. So there is a path forward on this. It's just, you know, we're a year out before we can probably say this is the plan. So there is something out there in place, and if you like, I bet you could probably get them to come in and explain the Mental Health Center for Excellence and all the partners that they have across the state of Kansas.
Representative Ballard.
I'll make it very brief. You know, I would agree. The staff are very frustrated about it. We know that they pay all this money, and yet they may get $100 an hour or whatever, but then it's the agencies that are getting the bulk of the money. It is not the nurses or the other people that are doing it in the process. They are very frustrated about it. We had this conversation. We talked about it. They looked at the amount, and they don't even like the amount of money they're paying. But if they don't have anybody to treat these people, that's what they have to do. They have their staff quit, then go and work for the contract people, and then it comes back again. So it is a problem that we're going to have to solve. But at the same time, they don't have a choice right now. Okay, thank you.
Chairman Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think as that committee, the subcommittee would move forward, they need to not only look at the liability issue, but they need to look at the pay differential. At what level will we be able to hire in-house and draw people away from the contract staffing? So thank you.
Duly noted. Representative Estes.
Part of the conversation needs to be recognizing, yes, we have this shortage statewide, but it's more expensive to solve it in some places than others. And sometimes we do other communities a harm by trying to protect certain geographic areas. And it's time for that tough conversation.
Any further discussion on the motion? Representative Helgerson.
Staff came to me and asked me to change or modify the motion because they said they wanted to have $9.9 million for Larned and $15.5 for Osawatomie, specifically named in the motion. So they had the figures that were ever in the bill. So I have to make that adjustment in the motion.
Is that all right with the second?
Second?
Yes. Repeat the numbers
Very
again,
emphatically,
please.
yes. All right. Any further discussion, even with the change in the motion? All right. Seeing none, Representative Helgerson.
I move the motion and the adjustment.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Any further discussion in regards to fiscal year 2025? Seeing none, Chairman Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move the adoption of the budget for the institutions for mental health, fiscal year 24 and 25 as amended.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Oh, is there a second? Sorry. Second by Representative Ballard. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Okay, committee, if you haven't looked at the schedule for next week, we are going to be having a meeting on Monday. And the reason being is because on Wednesday, Thursday, and potentially Friday, we're going to be on the floor all week. And we do have budgets that we need to get through. Obviously, we have to pass over the Kansas Guardianship Program and the state institutions for intellectual disabilities. That'll be on Monday for Chairman Mason to study all weekend. And then also the budgets that we're going to have that's already scheduled for Monday as well. And then Jill would like 15 seconds. I'm going to time you.
We had given the Representative Kincannon the wrong RS number, so it's was a revised error. So excuse me for that. It is 3101.
All right. We have that on record. All right. Thank you, Jill. So until Monday morning at 9 a.m., we are adjourned.